knows your webcams and microphones are currently disabled, but we strongly encourage participation to the chat. So please, we can test it out right now. Please say hello in the chat and let us know where are you from. Gerardo says, hello everyone, Gerardo from Toronto. Arlette, hello everyone, my name is Arlette. Where are you from, Arlette? From Toronto, Jaime Gonzalez, Diana from Toronto as well, Arlette from Mexico, Nestor, he's from Nicaragua, now he's living in Toronto, Sofia from Mexico, Mirta from Toronto. Monitoring the chat will be Catherine Robles. She will be navigating the chat to ensure that you have a great experience here tonight. Yvette from Toronto as well. Then there will also be an audience question session at the end of tonight's event. So please listen attentively and reserve your questions for the end of the session by submitting them in the chat, please. Now, without further ado, let's start. I would like to introduce Samara Rincon, Program Coordinator of the Edison Initiative at Seneca Helix.
Thank you, Mel. Thank you so much, Hispanotech, for having me tonight for this great event, great organization. And thank you for the kind introduction. Well, it's an honor for me to be here moderating this panel with these great women. I just want to also introduce myself. And before that, I want to say Happy International Women's Month. The month hasn't ended yet. So we are also here to celebrate International Women's Day. So yeah, I just wanted to say that. And again, my name is Samara Rincon, coordinator of the Horizons program at Seneca Helix, which is the entrepreneurship incubator at Seneca. And a little bit about myself, I am originally from Colombia, living here in Canada for the last 6 years. I am an industrial engineer. I am very passionate about finding new ways to empower women, building strong customer relationships, and increasing entrepreneurial engagement. I am currently leading an initiative, which is Horizons, that is funded in part by the federal government, specifically by the Women's Employment Readiness Pilot Program at Seneca Helix. This program has the goal to help women, including gender diverse people, to advance in their careers by providing free workshops, career supports, and networking opportunities. Okay, so now the theme for tonight's event is the imposter syndrome, and you will hear how our panelists have navigated new paths to embrace gender equality, innovation, and technology. And now I would like to introduce our special panelists. I'm gonna start with Gloria Pierre. Gloria has started her company. The name is Clearly Speaking in 2000. And Gloria has been developing results-oriented training to empower her clients locally and internationally to communicate clearly, consistently, and confidently. Her training covers public speaking, presentation skills, pronunciation, grammar, accent reduction, and other soft skills. And now I'm going to present Diana Moyano. So Diana is an AI project manager at the Vector Institute of Artificial Intelligence. Her role involves understanding business needs, assigning resources, and providing actionable insights to technical and non-technical stakeholders. Some of her projects involve technology methodologies such as computer vision, reinforcement learning, robotic process automation, forecasting, natural language processing, and privacy enhancing technology. Last but not least, Isabel Inclán is a journalist who has worked for more than 20 years in Canada as a foreign correspondent, reporter, editor-in-chief, and press attaché. She is a freelance reporter for New Canadian Media and Cambridge Today. She is the host of the Essential Channel. In 2015, she was recognized as one of the 10 most influential Hispanic Canadians. In 2022, she got her Master in Communications and started working as the Spanish Resource Center's coordinator at Glendon College. Well, it's an honor for me to present these great panelists. Welcome, Diana, Gloria, and Isabel tonight. And now we are going to start with tonight's panel discussion. So, the first question is going to be for everyone in the panel, but I'm going to start with Gloria.
Thank you, Samara. And I would like to add to that introduction. I'm originally from Guyana in South America. And since I came to Canada, I've lived only in Ontario. But I have visited other provinces like Nova Scotia, Winnipeg, and Quebec. I love doing crossword puzzles. I love anything to do with words. And I also like traveling. In another month or so, I will be doing a 12-day Camino walk, starting in Portugal and ending up in Spain. And we'll be walking anywhere from 15 to 30 kilometers daily. So I've been walking all around Toronto in preparation for this. So if you have ever seen a woman looking as though she's homeless and she's just walking aimlessly, it would have been me, just getting my practice. Something that I want to add to the introduction is that I really love what I do. And because I am my own boss as such, I get to discover so much about myself and lots of time to discover it. I've also written 6 books that complement the training that I offer. And I also have some other products to learn grammar and vocabulary through word search puzzles that will be launching soon. And in my business, I've had the opportunity to work with some amazing people who are doing really great things. I've coached people who have presented at the White House, who have presented at United Nations, who have spoken at Air Canada Centre. And I've done some training in other countries also. So I not only get to do what I love, but I also get to learn a lot from clients from all over the world. You also wanted to know the barriers that I had in getting to where I am. Some of those barriers were marketing and technology. I'm still not as good as I want to be, but I'm improving. And other barriers were setting up systems and identifying what kind of help I needed. I'm still working on those also.
Amazing. Thank you, Gloria. Thank you for your introduction. And it's nice to meet somebody from French Guiana from South America. I am from South America, but it's the first time.
No, it used to be British Guyana.
Okay.
Now British. It's Guyana.
It's the first time that I meet somebody from that country. So yeah, thank you for being here. And thank you for bringing that energy to our women and our audience today. I wish I can see you like running around Toronto. I'm not good at exercising, but if you empower others to do that, that's great. Thank you. Now I would like to go with Diana Moyano. If you want to also introduce yourself and also share with our audience tonight a little bit more of the barriers that you have overcome as a female professional in a male-dominant industry.
Awesome. Yeah. Hi, everyone. So it's interesting how I could introduce myself given the amazing panel, and I feel very humble to be able to, have the discussion and explore various ways of overcoming different challenges that we might encounter in our careers. So just for some context, I've been here for 10 years approximately. I come from Colombia as well. So there's a bunch of people from Colombia, which is amazing. That makes me feel super excited and proud of my own country. That's amazing. My background is in business, but I went through a crazy transition into a very technical role. So I started in international supply chain, and then eventually I transitioned into AI, right? And that took me approximately a few years to do so. So at this point, I am currently working with very, very technical people, research-oriented individuals, as well as non-technical people, business-oriented individuals, right? So that requires me to actually divide my mind into different mindsets, I would say. And perhaps one of the things or perhaps a disclaimer that I want to give it here is that all the things that you are going to hear from each one of the panelists are just some of the ways that we were able to get where we are. Okay, it doesn't mean that there is one single way to get there. That's why I'm saying that I'm going to learn a lot from Gloria and Isabel from this perspective. And I'm saying this disclaimer because some of the thoughts that I want to share with you might sound a bit counterintuitive, especially by the time we talk about the barriers and how we might want to overcome them. So based on my own experience, one of the things that you might have heard before, but I want to bring it up, is perfectionism is number one. And for those people who always, during those interviews, when they ask you what's your biggest flaw or something like that, and you think that by saying perfectionism is a good way to answer that question, I would say perfectionism could be a very, very difficult problem to overcome, and that could prevent you from real opportunities. I would start by saying that because people might think that being a perfectionist is some sort of like a flaw, but that you are addressing into a good thing. No, that's not the case. You need to understand that perfectionism is not good because, first of all, we are flawed individuals. We will never get where we want to go if we have that mentality. We need to see ourselves as people who might be changing over time, and that's okay. That's going to release a heavy burden on your shoulders if you think that you have room for growth. So that's the current barrier that I've seen, not only from myself in the past, but also from other people who have gone through the process of constant evolving their career and so on and so forth. The other one that I have seen quite a lot is that our perception or the perception of ourselves and about the world also could stop us from acting. And sometimes we don't need to deeply follow our core values when they are not the best values sometimes, because those are hard to change. Sometimes we just need to act, and then our perception will change for the better, right? So I will give more details into what I mean by that. But perception, it's an important aspect that could prevent us from actually taking chances and taking risks, right? Another thing that I've also seen for myself and from other people is that we tend to pay attention to everything. We think that we have to put the same importance to every single thing that are in front of us, and that's not efficient, in my opinion. I think that sometimes we need to understand that there are certain things that are more important than others in certain moments in our lives, right? If you are deciding on, I don't know, like changing your career, that comes with certain consequences that you are willing to take, right? And sometimes there are other things that you shouldn't care about. Sometimes we think that we are able to handle all the burden, and that's not the case. So if you think that everything is important, you are not being efficient, in my point of view. And then the final one, which is, I'm sure, a bunch of them that you will feel super, super identified with, is that we don't put enough weight or importance to our own interests. Sometimes we believe that we are being selfish, and that's not good. In my opinion, that's a huge problem. By the time you try to change your careers, by the time you're trying to accomplish certain things, I've seen people that try to say yes to everything. And the problem with that is that you are building relationships that will not be sustainable over time. And that's a big problem. So being selfless all the time is not good, in my opinion. So those are barriers that I've seen that might prevent you from actually getting there.
Thank you, Diana. And you remind me a saying that we have in Colombia, that you are from Colombia. I don't know if you remember this saying, but we always say that aiming for perfect results is the main enemy of good results, right? Like sometimes when we focus so much on perfection, like everything has to be perfect. And I'm gonna speak about myself as well. Like sometimes I would like to control everything, but every time that something that we haven't expected happens, and we consider that that's a failure or something, that's actually a good thing. That's actually a lesson learned. And every time you're gonna get better, you're learning, you're getting trained to a certain role, to a certain industry, you don't have to be the perfect fit for everything. You have to put your personality, all your skills, but also you have to learn from the experience. So thank you for sharing those barriers with us, and also like how you have overcome those difficulties. So now I want to pass it on Isabel. We would like to hear more about your extensive trajectory as a journalist, both Mexico and Canada, and all the obstacles that you have as a career-minded people.
Thanks, Samara. Thanks, everyone. First of all, I want to say thank you, Hispanotech, Citlali, Carlos Paz. Thanks for this invitation and to have the opportunity to share my experience with amazing panel and all the public. I can mention now, public, 41 participants in this Zoom is amazing. First of all, I don't want to add too much about my career, but maybe some of you know me working as a journalist in Mexico for 10 years and in Canada for more than 24. So it's a long journey. And yes, I was like able to do my career here in Canada, even though the language was the first obstacle that I faced when I arrived 24 years ago, because I arrived with my basic English, but trying to do journalism in Canada was difficult because it's another language. So if I were a photographer, probably I can use my camera and continue doing assignments as a photographer, and that's it. The technique is gonna be the same or something like that. But thinking about doing interviews and write articles in another language that was my first language, definitely was one main obstacle that I faced. And by the way, I cannot hear very well. So it was like a plus, another little problem in this immigration experience. But even though that, I was lucky because I was able to start and continue working as a journalist for media, Mexican medias, and also as a foreign correspondent. I was working for Mexican newspapers and also for Mexican news agency. And then living here in Canada, I was able also to work for ethnic media, Correo Canadiense, 20 years ago. I recently, 2 years ago, I was editor-in-chief of Correo Canadiense. So I love journalists. Journalism is my passion. So just I want to do that. Anyways, one way to other way in Spanish, in English. After 24 years living here in Canada, I am able to write in English, writing for New Canadian Media, and also I am doing a placement at Cambridge today. So it's still one obstacle because, of course, if I was able for the news agency write 3 or 4 articles in Spanish a day, one article in English takes me probably 1 week. So it's different, and I want to do, of course, to do all the same. I have the experience, but the thing is, the instrument to share my skills is the English. So it has been a little bit difficult, but I'm still doing. But at this point, I would like to mention another obstacle. I would like to mention the racialization in the labor market. It across all the professions. When we are immigrant, we face that racialization. What happened in my field in journalism? And I want to bring some results from the Canadian Association of Journalists. They did a study, and look at this one, results. 25% are white reporters. 10% in the newsrooms is the place when they use the, I'm talking about Toronto Star, CBC, when they type and produce the news. 75% is white reporters, 10% Asian, 6% Indigenous, 3% Black, 2% Middle East, 1% Latin American. Just 1% reporters from Latin America with Latin American background are working in the newsrooms here in Canada. So this is not a good situation. It doesn't help when you are a journalist and you arrive here. So it is important to recognize in this session how the racialization of the labor market, and I think this applies to another profession, but I am talking what I know. The journalist is not too easy. It's nice that they produce this study, the Canadian Association of Journalists, and they are trying to do the same. By the way, this study is like 2 years ago, they used to continue apply surveys in the newsrooms and to know how is the diversification over there. And as a result, by the way, I have the chance to do that placement in the Cambridge Today. So probably 5 years ago, 10 years ago, they didn't imagine. They continue just having white reporters and that's it. But thanks for this study, thanks for this analysis. But I bring here because it is still one of the obstacles, I think, for many immigrants, just facing that racialization. So I will stop here for now. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Isabel. I just want to test my volume, my sound. Is the audience hearing me well right now? Yes? Okay, thank you. Thank you, Isabel, for sharing your story. I think the majority of us here tonight in this panel are immigrants. We are coming from a different country. Of course, the language is the first barrier at the beginning. And especially in different industries, like I really admire your story because as a journalist, as you say, your instrument is the language, communication skills, right? So I know I have been in those shoes. It's really hard at the beginning, not only to make us communicate in a professional way, but also to find the right words, right? Like to express ourselves that we don't come across in another direction. So thank you for this empowering story, because I think the mind is also our limitation, and you are a perfect example that if you are passionate about your career, about your profession, about what you do, there are ways and there is a process to do it, to follow. And I'm sure that because of people like you, that number of Latin Americans in the journalism industry internal is going to grow. So thank you for that, and congratulations on your accomplishments as well. So now that we have heard from our panelists' stories, we want to, we noticed that there is a common denominator here, like something that is called maybe imposter syndrome, like those barriers or obstacles that we face. And you heard everybody has a different background here in the panel, but like maybe this common denominator is like to have this negative self-talk at the beginning of the journey, like, oh, we cannot do this, this is too much, maybe I'm gonna give up. So that's why I want to ask the second question to our panelists, and I'm going to start with Diana. Diana, why do so many women hold themselves back from chasing their dreams?
There are, there are very obstacles that we might have in our minds, and you're already saying is like it sometimes is based on our perception of ourselves and the world. And one of some of the items that I'd like you to consider are three that come to mind at this point. Is that once again, it's okay not to be perfect. Once again, it's important to understand that you are dynamic, you change. You don't need to be exactly the same person that you were years ago. We adapt in order to get things done depending on what's important for us, and that's okay, right? Like we don't have to fix ourselves. So this is my personality, this is who I am. If I act this way or that way, then people might think that I'm flimsy or something like that. That's not how things work. We adjust to the different circumstances, and that's just as genuine as who we are with others. That's okay. One of the things that when I was reading this book, there was this interesting book who probably you might have read, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. There's one that really caught my attention, and it's about the circle of influence versus the circle of concern, right? So basically your circle of influence, in theory, are the things that you could potentially change, you have control over. And the circle of concern are the ones that you are unable to control, right? What this author is proposing is that try to change certain things, certain habits, so that your circle of influence can get slightly bigger, right? When you think that you have done everything and others do not recognize your effort, basically you're putting yourself, your circle of influence gets smaller and smaller because you think that you are unable to actually do anything. So once again, based on perceptions, you might need to change certain habits. So there is this interesting perspective or approach that is called cognitive behavioral therapy, that it's saying that, hey, perhaps there are certain concepts that you have around the world that are just there, your core values, but instead of trying to change them right away, because those are hard to change, sometimes you just need to change your actions, your behaviors, even though you might not believe in that during that time, but then eventually your body will learn the benefits of doing that, and then your core values will eventually change for the better. So for instance, I remember that one of the things that I was quite afraid of at the beginning was presentations in general, right? And that was something that I was not feeling comfortable with. And at the beginning, I had to force myself to fake it. And so when you say fake it till you make it, I totally believe in that thing. Sometimes we need to do things that we might not fully believe in, and that's okay. And as you keep trying, your body starts to get used to this thing. Your body starts to understand that, oh, it's not that bad as I thought that it was going to be. And then eventually your core understanding of presentations in this case will not represent as much risks as they could have represented in the past, right? So sometimes you need to kind of trick yourself that way. And over time, things might change for the better. That's one thing that you might want to consider. Another thing is that you should, and this is once again, try to increase your area of influence. Sometimes, or try to make life easier for those whose decisions influence you or impact you. I'm just going to give you an example. Basically, I was reading in this other book that is called How Women Rise, very interesting book. And there was this case in which a person was not being recognized for the things that she has been doing. Because she's saying, okay, I try to do this thing, I'm trying to do my job 100% of it, and my boss is not recognizing me to the point that I should get a raise or should get a promotion or stuff like that. So number one, she made the assumption that her boss should understand that she did 100% of her work without even telling that person, okay? So that's the problem, because once again, we think that if we tell that person that we're doing this amount of work, that's selfish. That's not. Maybe you are actually making things easier for your boss to actually understand that you are doing a lot of things. Sometimes you might not need to do 100% of your job because you might be focusing your attention in other important things as well. And that's okay too. If your focus is to get a promotion, you have to be clear in telling that person that you are trying to get it, you are trying to advance in your career and stuff like that. And sometimes for us, because we are risk avoidant, it's hard to actually tell these kinds of things to people, but people do not need to assume things based on what you do all the time. They have other things to do. You need to make things easier for others, especially when their decisions are impacting you. That's another important thing here. And the final one is consider the good enough approach as opposed to being a perfectionist. Okay, so for instance, your perception of perfection or success might be different from others, right? So you might put all your attention, all your efforts in what you think will be successful, and then you realize after putting so much effort that you are not getting anything out of it, okay? And that's very frustrating. So perhaps you might want to start with something very small, test it out, try to do an experiment with it. If it doesn't work out, change, iterate, try again. But don't try to put all your efforts in a bucket when you don't know what might happen, because otherwise you might get super frustrated that things might not go the way you want. So perhaps these approaches that I'm suggesting, those are just, once again, based on your perception around the world, right? And eventually things might change if you change your habits at the end of the day. So I'm just giving some few examples of how I did it with myself, or what I've heard from others. Yeah.
Thank you, Diana. Again, I'm gonna do a sound test. Do you guys hear me? Because I'm not able to hear anything. Something happened with technology.
Can you hear us?
We can hear.
Okay. So you hear. Okay. So I was listening to the first part of your answer, and yes, like sometimes when we focus on that specific thing that doesn't make us achieve that goal that we want, and then like we are only putting all the energy on that and not finding the solution, or as you say, like faking us until we make it. That's something that sometimes can work. Personally, I didn't know that it worked for me, but it gets, like, the body gets used to it, and like all the habits that we put around, I don't know, are focused and aligned with that goal instead of putting that energy, whether we want to go ahead or not. So thank you for sharing that. I wasn't able to listen to the last part, but at least I got the first part of the answer. So now I'm going to ask Isabel, what are your thoughts on the imposter syndrome, and why do you think that many women hold ourselves back from chasing their dreams?
Thank you, Samara. I would like to bring to this panel today, I will propose, when we are talking about the imposter syndrome, I propose a cultural framework approach. What I mean we need to think that phenomenon, why women are sometimes behind the decision, and why they don't decide to participate or to take some important leading roles. And I was thinking about cultural, about education, about tradition. I think it's not a problem related that because we don't want to do. Probably is because in our family, when we grow up, always we think probably men can do it better than women. And in general, we have, for instance, more presidents, men presidents than women. And also at the corporation, CEO positions, probably we see more men than women. So it's part of the society, it's part of the education, it's part of the image that we have in this analysis. And I think it's good if we want to tackle that kind of problem. First of all, is to identify what is the problem. What is the problem? And I am glad that we can talk about this imposter syndrome, or even terms such as glass ceiling. This is another important concept that help us to understand why some women just grow up in one company or something like that, but never take the main important position. By the way, in my master thesis, I analyzed about Latin American women participating in Canadian politics. And glass ceiling was one important part in my analysis, because this invisible ceiling is there, even though we don't see that, but it's still there. So I interview some Latin American candidates, and they refer about how they are candidates, but they difficult for them to win an election. So related to that concept, the imposter syndrome, I propose, yes, to talk about this, but in the framework that each woman is different. There are different circumstances that make that women said, okay, just I stay here. And I want to bring here one of the important things is if that woman has kids. Sometimes when we have a family, and probably in this participants group, if you are a mom, you know what I am talking about. This is really, really being a mom and being a professional is so difficult. It's difficult because sometimes you are doing your profession, but they call you from the daycare and they said your kid is sick, and you have to leave that one and run to the daycare and pick up your son or your daughter, and then take care of this and thinking of, or you are at the hospital, but you are thinking about, oh, in my desk, I have to finish this tomorrow. Something like that is part of our women life. And I think all these circumstances are related to why sometimes we said, no, I cannot do it now, later, or probably it's better to do, leave the chance for one colleague. And just I want to mention here one clear example of this. I remember a long time ago, I was writing an article related to community participation, and it was a group of women, and they have to select a participant in one conference, and they asked a man to be their representatives in that conference. It was crazy because it was a good, a big group, and they are clear example of this. They didn't believe one of them can do the representative for organization for that event, and they asked one friend. It was a man, and they said, can you go in our behalf? So it was crazy. And it exists. It's good to recognize that it exists. And the question now is what we can do. So we can continue talking about this point, but I can bring here that this is important to recognize that, and this is important that probably we don't say, yes, I can do it, a candidate, for instance, because we have a big expectation. And we said, no, to be a president or to be a candidate is too much responsibility. No, it's no, I cannot do it. But as you mentioned before, some men just go and said, I am the candidate, that's it. So it's as easy like this. So I mentioned the candidates because now, you know, we're going to have a new election for Toronto to elect a new mayor. And Ana Bailao, who I interviewed last year, she was a deputy mayor. And I was like waiting for her to say, I can run. Finally, she decided. And hopefully we're going to see her and another women as a candidates. And they are advancing in this syndrome. And they said, no, let's put that syndrome aside. And they decide to do it. But I think it's a problem still there. We need to recognize that, and we need to act against that syndrome.
Thank you, Isabel. You're very, very right on that. And yeah, sometimes it's cultural. We have done a lot, but there is more to do. And we need men to be allies here as well. Now, Gloria, what would you like to add on this? Gloria, you're muted.
Okay, now you can hear me.
Yeah.
The imposter syndrome happened to me, and I would like to share my experience. Soon after I started my business, I did a competitor analysis, which started what I now know as imposter syndrome. I discovered that I was competing with women who were established in business and influential circles, who were on boards of organizations, and who had the clients that I wanted. After I learned all of that, I was considering whether I should continue with this business or not. After all, I'm an immigrant, a colored woman, and unknown in the field, with no connections, no affiliations, no professional support. And I thought, I wanted to compete with these women. What do I have to offer potential clients? And why would they come to me? I felt less than, and fear that anyone wanting communication training from me will know that I'm a fraud. I'm an imposter because I wasn't qualified enough, because I wasn't experienced enough, because I wasn't well connected, because I wasn't known, and because I was definitely not influential. Now, my self-defeating thoughts fluctuated between, I can do this, and who are you kidding, really? I spent a lot of time questioning my ability than I did boosting my self-esteem. And for those who have experienced imposter syndrome, you can clearly identify. Now, I never once questioned my feelings of inadequacy. I just accepted them as a truth, as though that's the limit of where I could go. I never even reached out to my competitors to see if what I was thinking was justified. Fortunately, I didn't quit, but I learned a lot about self-sabotage. And to answer the question now, I think the fundamental reason why women succumb to imposter syndrome is that because they don't question their thoughts, they accept them to be facts, just like I did. Some other reasons are maybe their goal isn't clear enough, or maybe it's not their dream, but it's what's expected of them. We were talking about cultural aspects or cultural influences just now. It could also be a fear of failure, or maybe a fear of success. Maybe no support from the boss, or from your family or spouse. And maybe because of those cultural clashes or family traditions, which are so deeply ingrained in us. So, I mean, there is a lot more that we can all talk about imposter syndrome, but that's what I have to offer for now.
Thank you so much for being vulnerable here and for sharing your story with us. I'm sure like everybody can relate. We have been imposters of ourselves, our lives at some point. But now let's move to another topic, because we have talked about a lot about obstacles and difficulties, but there is a reality that we can't overcome these barriers alone. We need people around ourselves, right? Mentorship is extremely important to grow, especially for aspiring female leaders. So I want to start with Diana. how have you found your mentors, and how do you get to work with them to forge a path on your career advancement?
Thank you, Samara. So one of the things that I did for years was volunteering. Here in Canada, volunteering is quite valued, and that's something that I learned, and it was very useful for me as an individual, as a professional, because I had the opportunity to learn from the experiences, and part of the experiences is my failures throughout that process. But the nice thing about volunteering is that although it might not be paid or something like that, you could still, work on the things that you wouldn't be able to do in your regular job, for instance, right? You are more willing to take more risks. And also you are able to talk to other people. And some of them were mentors, right? So they were the ones who actually, and sorry, there's some noise here. My cat is just playing here. There are some of the things that the people that I work with serve as mentors. Sometimes you don't need to have a formal relationship, mentee-mentor, to actually say you are my mentor, right? They don't need to be more senior than you. Sometimes they can be just your colleague, and that's just good enough. That's number one. So volunteering is one way where I was able to get some mentors, even at work, without even telling them, can you be my mentor? They were just mentoring me. You can just approach them and say, hey, I need some piece of advice from you for this or that, or, make it informal. Sometimes when you make things very serious, they might think that there's a lot of responsibility in actually helping you out. So it's better just to keep it simple, and you're just learning from those random encounters, experiences that you're having with them, and you are gonna learn a lot from those ones. That's one thing. The other thing is that, yes, you might be looking for mentors, but at the same time, I would challenge that idea. And I would say you should also mentor other people, and you learn from the experience yourself, in the sense that, and that's, once again, coming to the imposter syndrome, you might think that you are not good enough to be a mentor of someone, and that's not true, right? I think this is something that you will understand, that your experiences, even though they have been, let's say, for just a few years, will be super valuable for other people that might have just come here, right? Or for instance, although you might not have the best communication skills, perhaps since you're coming from another country with experiences in a particular industry, that it's still relevant no matter where you are, you can still help others, right? So once again, try to look for self-sustainable relationships, things that can last over time. If you're expecting that there are relationships for which you actually are receiving all the time, or you're giving all the time, that's not going to last. So if you are working with someone who you consider your mentor, you should also offer help to that person, so that there is some sort of like a win-win type of situation, and things might last a bit longer. They might understand that you are valuable as an individual too, and you're just not asking for things all the time. So yeah, those are my thoughts on that.
Thank you, Diana. That's a very good advice for the audience. I never heard somebody to say about the long-lasting relationship with mentors. That's a key. Sometimes, yeah, we admire people, but if we don't have that solid relationship with them, we cannot get that mentorship. And also, I really like the idea of like thinking of ourselves to be mentors and empower more women. That's why we are here in this panel tonight, right? So thank you for that. Now I'm going with Gloria. Who were your mentors and how did you find them? Gloria, you're muted.
Sorry. I do not have one mentor. I have many. And that is because of a Chinese proverb I read years ago. It said, if you want to know the road ahead, ask those coming back. So what I do is I tend to go to subject matter experts when needed. And I also belong to business mastermind groups, which usually have people with a variety of experience and expertise. And I agree with what Diana was saying about by mentoring others, you learn so much. You think you don't know a lot, but when you mentor others, it really makes the imposter syndrome dissipate or deflate, because everybody knows a little bit of something. And when you mentor other people or when you get a mentor, you hear about the situation or about an industry or about a position from different perspectives. So I have learned a lot from the people that I ask questions from. And as Deanna said, it doesn't have to be a formal agreement. It could be somebody just somebody who you know very well. Obviously, you'll have to know them very well before you ask them to informally help you. So again, as Deanna said, you have to build strong relationships to get that sort of help.
Thank you, Gloria. Thank you so much for your advice. And yes, you never know when you start mentoring people, but if you have that experience and that learning process, everybody has something to give to others. Yes. That's a very good advice. Thank you. And now Isabel, who has inspired you to help you be where you are at right now?
Thank you, Samara. Before to ask that question, I would like to propose two kinds of mentorship. One formal, I can say, and one informal. When I said formal, and now I will talk about me, I am part of the New Canadian Media Collective. This New Canadian Media Collective brings immigrant journalists from around the world. We are living here in Canada and we face what I mentioned at the beginning, how to write in English in the mainstream media. It's difficult because of the racialization and because of the language. So that collective put us mentor. So we have an English mentor, reporters, editors, and we write the article and they review the article and did a little bit push and correcting something, editing something, and the story is published. So that is the formal mentorship, and I really like, because we as an immigrant, we need that push. Sometimes we need that polish, especially in my field, in the story to be published, of course. And the other mentorship that I propose is like an imaginary mentorship. For instance, I can mention now 3 great journalists. One is Carmen Aristegui, Lidia Cacho from Mexico, and also Jorge Ramos, Mexican, working in Univision. Those are journalists that I follow them, and I like what they are doing. So they are my mentorship. They don't know about this. We never see it. We never fill the contract, but I pick my mentorship. So this is my proposal in any field for any professional, any person who is starting the career. Just pick your mentor and said, I like what that person is doing. Follow that person. Ask a question if you can at the social media, and just pick as a mentor. And I think it could be a good exercise to follow the person, to try to say, I admire that person. I like what that person is doing. So I would like to follow his or her steps and start doing the same. So just see around and looking for a professional mentor that you can see in your field, and follow that path. And I am sure you can learn too much about that experience.
Thank you, Isabel. And I have to say that I'm glad to hear that Canada is very welcoming also in your industry with immigrants. It's nice to know that you have mentors in that industry. Native speakers, they mentor you.
We cannot hear you, Samara, very well again.
Can you hear me now?
Did you want to repeat just the last part?
Yes, sorry. I was saying that I'm glad to hear that you have received that mentorship from your industry here in Canada. I think this country is very welcoming for immigrants in general. And the fact that you have encountered that in your sector, like native mentors that they can edit, that they can be in the process, it's just fascinating. I know that not many countries have that, and having that opportunity, it's amazing. So thank you for sharing that. Now I want to highlight the diverse professional backgrounds of our panelists. So with expertise spanning in being career-minded individuals and involved in the entrepreneurial ecosystem, let's explore how these various skills contribute to their career development. So Gloria, if you looked back at the start of your career, what advice would you have wanted to have from your colleagues, mentors, friends, or family?
Thank you, Samara. This had me thinking from way back. This sent me way back, because what I wished was that I was encouraged from an earlier age to explore what I wanted to do when I grew up. That was not something that was discussed in my community or in my home, but what I wanted to do when I grew up. What kind of work did I want to do? And at the time, of course, they didn't ask, or they didn't look at what were your strengths as a child growing up. What did you like to do? Just like we are doing with our kids these days. But I would have liked to, for somebody to say, okay, what do you want to do? And encourage me in that way. And if that had happened, I think I would have looked at the time when I started my career, when I started working, as the start of a career, not just a job. Because if I had that objective or that viewpoint of this is the start of my career, I would have been able to make better strides to be more successful in a job. And I don't know, maybe that's why I quit the job and started a business of my own.
Yeah, thank you. Sometimes the right questions that we ask ourselves, that's the key, right? Like to find our passion, like what's the journey that we want to follow. So thank you for sharing that.
You're welcome.
Isabel, what advice could you give to young people that are beginning their careers?
Thank you. First of all, I would like to say that we are living in a competitive world. We like or we don't like, but it's competitive, especially now with the after pandemic. If we can say we are living now after pandemic, and we are facing an economic crisis and inflation and everything. So I think in many fields, in many careers, we face that competition. And my advice is be professional. Try to be professional. Try to be persistent. Try to do whatever you have to do in your profession in the best way. And I suggest, for instance, to students at Glendon, just keep, when you are doing a essay or something like that, in our case, in our profession is we need to present a project or something like that. Being professional, I mean, you are your own person who review that project. So after you finish a project or you present a project, a proposal or something like that, first of all, finish on time. Keep time to review that. Believe me, when you review yourself what you did, you will find corrections to do. So instead the editor, instead your boss find those details, if you keep a time for that review, it's going to be better because you review and it's good. For instance, if you finish at night, keep the time or put some hours apart and then review again. Review the final part, and for sure you will find some things to correct because you want to present in the best way, right? In the professional way. Because behind you, there are probably more people looking for your spot. So especially now that we have, again, in this labor market, we have positions like 1 year, 6 months, 2 years. We are in approved, everything, all the time. So it's not easy to keep the spots, and we have that competition. So my advice could be, yes, be professional, be doing in a good way. And for instance, if you need to, when I talking about professional, answer an important email 3 days later is not good. Present a project after the deadline is not good. So all these kind of details that I think, gonna be good in your career, especially when you are starting, because you still learning. You finish the university, you start looking for, probably you are in your first job, second job. So you are still learning, and try to learn from, again, if you find some mentors, follow them. But in general, try to be professionals, be punctual, and answer the emails, everything in a good time, in a correct timeline. I think those kind of advice will help to any young professional.
Thank you, Isabel. Definitely, it will help to not only young professionals, but everybody. It's a good reminder, especially as you said, the world is very competitive right now. So thank you for that. Now, Diana, what would be the piece of advice that you give to our audience, regardless the stage of their careers?
Sure. So, yeah, the fact that most of us, if not all of us, are immigrants, that brings this aspect of experience that we could have had back home, right? And of course, the question is usually like, should I include that as part of who I am as a professional? Should I, or is that thing going to actually prevent me from getting where I want to go? Because that's usually some of the fears that people might have at that point. You might have heard over and over again this idea of Canadian experience and so on and so forth, especially for those individuals who are going through the immigration process, right? So I'm sure that most of us are very familiar with the hurdles of dealing with all this paperwork and the process to actually get your PR or work permit or whatever, you name it, right? And then you are adding this layer of complexity that you are competing with everybody here. And then you have to know how to sell yourself, given the background that you might have, right? So some people might think that it's better not to include that experience. In my opinion, you should, but you should frame it in a way that adds value to your profile and try to tailor it to where you want to go, right? So for instance, it's hard for me to speak from my own experience, because as soon as I graduated from school, I came here. So I had no experience whatsoever. And that's a different type of challenge that I'm not going to touch on. I think that the majority of the people who actually come here, they had some past experience from back home. So one of the things that I want to highlight is, what are those transferable skills that you might want to bring in to your profile that might be relevant by the time you are discussing in an interview process, or by the time you're selling this thing in your CV. Once again, framing is extremely important. Communication, it's number one. And once again, it comes back to my point of trying to increase your circle of influence. If you know that you should improve certain things of your writing skills or communication skills, you have the power to do that, and you have to do it, okay? Because once again, as it's been already mentioned, we are competing with everybody. It's not that they're going to look at you, oh, this person is an immigrant, I'm just going to have a different standard for this person. That doesn't happen, okay? You are competing with everybody. And for that reason, you should keep certain standards, especially when communicating. So for instance, I had the chance to work with different types of companies. And when they're asking me to look for someone to work on the role that they're looking for, they always ask for the same thing. I want this person to be able to communicate effectively, right? And it's not only about your typical email, it's about interpersonal relationships. It's about you being able to negotiate with other people. It's about being able to bring different ideas into one single thing and aligning them, right? Being able to talk to people who might not come from your same background and be comfortable with that. If you're able to address these kinds of things, your supervisor or your boss might see the potential for you to do more things than just your day-to-day type of thing. And that's a good thing, right? That will be one thing to consider. The other one is that eventually you will have to find ways to make yourself unique. One of the ways, especially for those who are transitioning into a different career, is actually thinking yourself as a hybrid type of profile, right? A good example of it is individuals who are transitioning from technical to a more type of managerial profile, who might have had experience back home that could have served both purposes. That's what's going to make you unique compared to others. In my case, for instance, I come from a business background, but then eventually I brought a bunch of technical aspects. I learned how to code and stuff like that, and so on and so forth. So I don't need to compete with very technical people. I don't need to compete with extremely business-oriented individuals. I'm in the middle. So there are less people who might be competing with me in that field. So that's the type of approach that you could also consider, so that you can make yourself unique, right? And to be honest, hybrid profiles are now being quite common. So many professionals are changing careers and they are changing industries, and that's becoming a trend, right? So just consider that perspective. And one final thing that I usually recommend to the people I mentor is that if you are able to build a portfolio so that you can organize your ideas with narrative, that's extremely powerful. In the sense that if you're able to identify a problem that a specific client was facing, or someone that you were dealing with, you are trying to solve a problem, and that needs to go through a process. You have a methodology to solve that process. These are the results that you're getting. These are the next steps that you might be thinking if things go well, right? You are actually having a narrative from start to end that you are able to nicely put in a document or a portfolio that you can actually showcase. So by the time you're having, let's say, an interview or something like that, you have a clear idea of how to sell your profile through tangible outcomes, right? So that's another thing that has worked rather well for me and for other people that I have advised. But bottom line, what you're trying to do here is to make yourself unique. I'm just giving you just a little tips, but that's going to change over time. So then eventually, once again, you will have to change your perspective with time as well.
Thank you, Diana. I really like the concept of a hybrid profile. I've never heard it before, but I think like now that things are evolving and like there are different type of positions that sometimes you need to know a little bit of everything, but also like do like specific tasks. That's a very, very good example, and also definitely transferable skills. I came here 6 years ago with a lot of experience from back home, and I think Canada is very, as I said, welcoming for immigrants as well. Like they recognize the experience and the education that we have from back home, and it's not every country does that, but it's also part of like the personality of every individual when it comes to interviews, when it comes to actually do the work. It's very, they value that here. So I think it's also good for the audience to hear that if anybody is looking for a job. So now, talking about that, I'm sure that most of the participants are currently looking for a job or maybe thinking to change careers. So these questions are going to address that objective. So I'm going to start with Isabel. What women can do to promote their career advancement?
I agree, first of all, what Diana said, and I can add that it is important to keep a moment to reflect. Where are you at that time? Probably you finished the university, you are in the last year of your university, or you are in your second year working after university or changing career. So it's really important to reflect about where are you and where you want to be in 3 years, in 5 years. Probably if you imagine, probably you are doing a good job, but you don't feel good, you don't like it. I think one important thing is we need to like what we are doing. We need to enjoy it, what we are doing. We need to contact that passion about the profession, the career, because first of all, it's going to be easy. If you are doing what you like and they pay you when you are doing what you like, it's going to be easy, it's going to be great, you're going to be motivated to continue doing that. So it's important to have a reflection in any step where you are, to have a reflection if you are in the correct path. If you want to continue, if you want to be there in 3 or 5 years, ask yourself if you are in the correct path. Probably you are in the correct, probably no. Probably it's also important to know your strength, but also to recognize what you need to update, to correct, to study, to learn for your goal to be in 5 years old, in 5 years or even more. So I think it's important, never is too late to ask if you are in the correct career. Because if you continue in the career and probably you don't like it, it doesn't convince you, you're gonna suffer. Really, you're gonna suffer because you won't advance and everything. But when you are in the field that you like it's gonna be more easy, no, to continue do it. So just my invitation is to focus in your own goal, what you want to do, and also again continue your profession and adding more experience related to that field that you are working or you are studying. And just all the times is better to ask yourself if you are doing enough. Probably you want to be a manager in one area, but you are not doing very well, or you arrive late, or probably you don't propose things or projects, new projects to do. So ask yourself if you are doing enough in that path, and I think you will find a good answers on this.
Thank you, Isabel. I love the passion that you said. Passion is key to be unique, as Diana mentioned. And I think, well, I'm not going to stereotype here, but Latin Americans, we have a lot of passion. Even though there is language barriers, we are always, with a smile and with a lot of energy to do things, no matter what time it is, no matter what is required. We are there like wearing our t-shirts, and that's also part of our uniqueness or added value as a culture. So thank you for sharing that. We are running out of time here. So before to go to the questions orient, I just want to close off this panel with a very quick question for everyone. So in 2 words, what empowering women means to you, Diana?
Empowering. Probably what I would say is that you are clear about what you want to do, and you are clear with the rest of the people. You know where you want to go, and you communicate it to the rest of the people around you. You are not selfish, you are just being assertive. Okay, that's an important thing. And the second one is that you might be more valuable than you might think, you know. Probably you already have the skills. You just need to sell yourself better, you know. You just need to reflect those things in different words and you will be fine. I think it's more about that. I'm sure a bunch of you are super, super talented. You just need to say it.
Exactly, say it. Thank you, Diana. Now, Gloria, in 2 words, what empowering women means to you?
It means to me realizing potential. And what I mean by that is by us empowering women, encouraging them along the way, we are helping them to realize their potential. So they can be more than they know than they are, and more than they know that, and what they know they can be, because of the imposter syndrome and culture and traditions and so forth. We tend to suppress who we are and our potential. So for me, it means realizing potential.
I love it. Realizing potential is beautiful. Yeah, and if we have more mentors or more people surrounded with us with very long-lasting relationships, we can see that potential.
Yes.
Thank you for that. Isabel, your turn. In 2 words, what empowering women means to you?
It means for me, empowering women, empowering families, and empowering society. So if we have development of women, for sure we're going to have society, but we cannot do it ourselves. We need men's help. We need men's contribution. And let me congratulate our men participants in this session, because I really, really applaud you to be here, to have the interest to know about us and about everybody. That means a lot for me, that we have not just female, just male here also. Thank you. And for sure, the empower of the women is empower of the society.
Thank you, Isabel. Thank you so much. And yes, I definitely agree with you. We need men to be allies in this journey. And we have good male mentors and leaders that are inspiring us and are helping us to be leaders as well. So now I would like to invite our participants to submit your questions. I have already 2 questions from the audience that I'm going to start with. So I'm going to start with Gloria. What advice or tips will you share today to our attendees looking to build on new connections and find a mentor for their journey?
Okay, advice to build connections and find a mentor for their journey?
Yes.
Network. As Deanna said, it's something, I think it's Deanna or Isabel, or maybe you. It's what we do in North America, networking. You can't get anywhere without networking. And also what networking does, it allows you to not only grow your network, but know of opportunities and know the lay of the land, know how what the office culture is in Canada. I wrote a book called ABCs of Networking, and 26 chapters from A to Z. And I wrote that book because when networking started in North America, I was told to go network. And so I went networking, and I collect stacks and stacks of business cards and didn't know what to do with them after. So I thought that was useless. In researching for the book, one chapter stands out even to me this day, and it's a W chapter, withdraw after you deposit. And what that means is when you meet someone, you don't start asking them, oh, I'm looking for a job, can you help me? Or do you know about any openings anywhere? You do not ask for something first. You listen to what they're saying and try to give them something first. Try to deposit in that trust account so that when you are ready to ask, you don't feel self-conscious, because let's face it, we all are hesitant about asking somebody to do something for us. But when you deposit first, it's easy to ask, and that makes it easier. It also helps to build strong relationships, because when you do something for someone, and they appreciate it, they will want to reciprocate. And that really strengthens the relationship. Now, the person who you're doing something with for may not be the person who can help you, but they may know someone who knows someone who knows someone else who can give you or point you in the direction that you would like to go in. And that could eventually lead to a good mentor, maybe an opportunity for jobs, maybe, who knows, maybe a new dog, anything.
I love the new dog. Thank you. Yes, absolutely. Network is the key here.
Yes.
Thank you, Gloria. So now we have a question from Yvette. I'm gonna give it to Isabel. So can you share with us a career or job failure you had in the past, and what do you do to learn from that?
Thank you for it's difficult question for me. Yvette, thanks for the question. It's difficult because for the last 30 years after I finished university in Mexico, I had been working as a journalist. So it's difficult for me to say if I have another career and something happened. But I take this opportunity to just to imagine when you are doing something and you realize it's not good and you need to change the career or adjust something, I think it's fine. It's part of the learning, and it's part of the advancing in you as a person, as a professional, and just make some adjustment in your path. So I think it's important. It's fine if you change. I cannot think or imagine about this as a failure. I think it's part of the learning. Even though if you spend 2 years in one career and after you decide, oh, I lose my money over there, but now I'm gonna do this, it's part of the learning the profession, because something happened is nice. After you are working something, what you learned before, you can use, even though it's different career or something. That experience is the experience of the life. So all the things we are learning, we are using that learn in I believe in our life.
Thank you, Isabel. Yeah, that ties to the transferable skills that we mentioned before. So I'm gonna end with the last question from Marieli from the audience. So Diana, very briefly, because we have come to the end of this session. So will you be able to share an experience where you have elevated or promoted another woman?
That's going to be interesting because my team is mostly men. I'm the only one there, but in the past, I would say volunteering was definitely a channel for me to elevate other women. So basically, I was volunteering for this organization called OWIT, the Organization of Women in International Trade. So it was like kind of similar, but for international trade instead of technology, basically. And we had the chance to work on events that were promoting the advancements of women in that field, which is also male dominated, right? That's number one. And you know, I try to provide mentorship to anyone as much as I can. And it could be as simple as them reaching out to me via LinkedIn and asking me for a session where I can look at their profile, their LinkedIn, their, I don't know, anything that they might have, their CV and stuff like that, and provide just general, suggestions for this person to advance in their career. I think those are the things that come to mind, because at this point, what I'm doing, it's just helping mostly my team, which is just a bunch of guys at this point. One final thing, and it's related to the previous one in terms of, I wouldn't call it failure, I would say learning experience that I've mentioned before, and I really want to bring this up again, is the fact that sometimes it's hard for us to say no. And that can bring us into so many trouble, because we end up just gathering all the things that we might need to do because we're saying yes to everything. So that happened to me in my career, and that really got me in trouble. in the sense that I was saying yes to absolutely everything. And then I was expecting them to recognize my efforts. Once again, don't make assumptions. Don't assume that everybody should think that you are special. And the problem with that is that eventually I became resentful, and that's not good, right? So one of the things that I would highly recommend in your careers is to understand what is important for you, what's a priority, and what you should say no. Otherwise, you're going to become resentful and you won't be able to work 100% in the things that you care about. And I'm telling that to my own team. Believe me, men also face that same issue. I think it's also a personality trait that some individuals might have. And some of them, they say yes to everything. And I'm telling them, no. You should be more careful with how you are actually creating your boundaries in the different things. That could really affect your career, in my opinion. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Diana. Well, sadly, we have come to the end of this session, but what a great discussion, what a great panel. I just have to say thank you to Hispanotech for organizing this amazing event and for inviting us tonight to have this amazing conversation. Thank you to Gloria Pierre, to Diana Moyano, and Isabel Inclán for sharing your stories, experiences, and advice with the participants tonight. And finally, thank you to everyone who joined us tonight. I'm gonna pass it over to Catherine Robles, that she's going to wrap up this session. Thank you, Catherine, for having us tonight.
Thank you, Samara, for a very entertainment evening. Thank you, panelists. Members, it was really amazing just to hear your thoughts, your experience, and your advice. Definitely topics that, kind of apply for women and men equally, and together we can accomplish a lot more. Everyone, please don't forget to stop by our event website or page in our website. There are a couple of events already happening by the end of the month. I'm going to share with you the link over here. We have one with Oracle coming and one for engineers focused. So please stop by, sign up. Really, really good information that is going to be shared. I'm going to go ahead and release the poll. The poll is really just to get your thoughts and insights on how the event went. So please do not disconnect yourselves until you answer the questions fairly quickly. It's going to take just a couple of minutes. If there is absolutely anything that you get to need, feel free as well to email us directly. The recording of this event is going to be posted in our website later on. Thank you for being part of this great conversation and wishing you all a very lovely evening. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Muchas gracias.
Thank you, Catherine and Hispanotech, for the opportunity.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Catherine, Hispanotech. Thank you, Gloria, Diana, Isabel. Gracias.
Thank you again,
Gracias.
Hispanotech, for the invitation, and thanks for such a nice panel. Thank you so much, and Samara and Catherine, thanks for and Mel also. Thank you.
Appreciate it. I learned a lot. Very humble. Thank you.
Hope to see you all soon.
Bye.